Breaking Down the Psychology of Money, Timeless Lessons on Wealth, Greed, and Happiness by Morgan Housel, Chapter 1. No one's crazy. Money is one of those things that everyone thinks they understand until you realize how differently people see it. This first chapter hit me hard because it reminds you that every single person has their own money story. How we grew up, what we saw our parents do, the struggles or stability we lived through. Those experiences shape our entire relationship with money. Morgan Housel basically says, no one's crazy. We just see money through the lens of our own life. Someone who grew up during a financial crisis will think about risk and savings completely differently from someone who made money easily during a boom. Neither is wrong. They just have different references. I think that's one of the most important lessons in the whole book. People love to judge others' financial decisions. We'll say, that guy's insane to invest in crypto, or she's dumb for keeping all her money in cash. But the truth is, their choices make sense to them. If you grew up watching your family lose everything in a market crash, you might never trust the stock market again. If you saw someone get rich off risk, you might chase it your whole life. It made me think about how personal money really is. You can't copy someone's financial strategy and expect it to fit your life. You have to understand your own psychology, your fears, your comfort zone, your past experiences. That's what drives your behavior more than logic ever will. Housel isn't saying knowledge doesn't matter. He's saying that perspective matters more. Everyone's playing their own game, based on what they've lived through. Once you understand that, you stop judging and start learning from people instead. My biggest takeaway from this chapter: money decisions aren't about intelligence. They're about context. What looks crazy from the outside might be totally rational from someone else's point of view. So before calling someone foolish for how they handle money, remember, you don't know their story. That mindset alone changes how you see people, and it makes you way more self-aware about your own habits, too. Chapter 2, Luck and Risk. This chapter is all about understanding how much of life, especially when it comes to money, is shaped by things we can't control. Morgan Housel uses stories like Bill Gates and his classmate Kent Evans to show how luck and risk often run the show more than we want to admit. Gates had the right mix of talent, curiosity, and timing. But he also happened to go to one of the only high schools in the world with a computer lab in the 1970s. His friend Kent was just as smart, just as ambitious, but he died young in an accident. One man became a billionaire, the other never got the chance. That comparison is powerful because it reminds us success and failure aren't always fair. We love to credit our wins to skill and our losses to bad breaks. But the truth sits somewhere in between. Luck and risk are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. For me, this chapter is about humility. When you win, don't think you're a genius. And when you lose, don't think you're cursed. There are too many moving parts in life to assume you're in full control. Recognizing that helps you stay grounded. It stops you from being arrogant during the highs and bitter during the lows. Housel's advice is simple. Focus less on extreme examples. Don't model your decisions after the richest guy in the room or the most tragic failure story. Those outliers don't reflect what's typical. They reflect luck or bad timing. Instead, look for patterns that last, behaviors that stay consistent over time. Personally, I think this mindset is crucial for mental peace. You'll make better decisions when you accept that life isn't a math equation. You can play your cards perfectly and still lose the hand. That's not failure, it's probability. The takeaway? Be careful judging success or failure too quickly. Luck and risk both influence outcomes way more than we think. Respect that randomness. It'll make you smarter, calmer, and a lot more grateful for the breaks you do get. Chapter 3, Never Enough. This chapter hits right at the core of human nature, the constant chase for more. Morgan Housel starts with a story about Rajat Gupta, a man who had everything, wealth, power, status, yet risked it all for a little more money and prestige. He wasn't poor, he wasn't struggling, but he still made choices that destroyed his life. Why? Because enough never felt like enough. That's the disease most people catch when it comes to money. We move the goalpost every time we get closer to it. You make your first 100K, then you want 500K. You buy a nice car, then suddenly you want a nicer one. It never stops. And the worst part, you forget why you started in the first place. Housel's message here is simple but deep. Knowing when you have enough is real wealth. Because if you never define that limit, you'll live in a constant state of dissatisfaction. The irony is, chasing more often leads you to lose what truly matters. Your peace, your time, your relationships. I really connected with this chapter because I've seen it happen everywhere. People destroy their happiness for a number. It's like they think life starts after they reach a certain level, but that level keeps shifting. You'll never feel rich if you keep comparing yourself upward. There's always someone with a better car, a bigger house, or more followers. The chapter also reminds you that enough isn't about settling. It's about control. It's knowing what's enough for you, not for anyone else. The freedom to stop chasing things you don't need is the real flex. For me, the big takeaway is this. Wealth isn't just money. It's the ability to say, I have enough. If you can genuinely feel that way, you've already won the game most people never finish playing. When you stop needing to prove something, you start living with clarity. And that peace of mind, no amount of more can buy that. Chapter 4. Confounding Compounding. This chapter is one of my favorites because it explains how the simplest concept in finance, compounding, is also the most misunderstood. Morgan Housel starts by showing how Warren Buffett's fortune isn't just about being smart. It's about being consistent for decades. Buffett started investing early and never stopped. Most of his massive wealth came after he turned 50. That's not luck or genius. That's the power of time doing the heavy lifting. Here's the crazy part. Compounding works best when you don't interrupt it. Most people understand interest. Earn 10 reinvest, grow again. But few actually have the patience to let it run for years or decades. Everyone wants fast results. The problem is, compounding doesn't show its magic early. It looks boring at first, then it explodes later. And most people quit before that explosion happens. Housel explains that compounding isn't just about money. It's a mindset. Good habits, relationships, skills, they all grow the same way. Small, consistent actions multiplied over time create unbelievable results, but only if you give them time. What really stood out to me is that being consistent often beats being brilliant. You don't need to chase the biggest returns or time the market perfectly. You just need to stay in the game long enough. It's the same in life. The people who win are usually not the fastest starters, but the ones who never stop showing up. My reflection here. Compounding rewards patience, not intensity. Everyone wants the big payoff, but the secret is boring. Stay disciplined, avoid big mistakes, and let time do its work. You can't hack compounding, you can only respect it. So, the takeaway. Time is the most powerful force in wealth building. The earlier you start and the longer you stay consistent, the more unstoppable your growth becomes. In a world that's obsessed with quick wins and overnight success, compounding reminds you that slow, steady progress is what actually builds real wealth. And not just financial wealth, but in every area of life. Chapter 5, Getting Wealthy versus Staying Wealthy. This chapter is one of the most eye-opening ones because it explains that getting rich and staying rich are two completely different skills. A lot of people master the first one, ambition, hustle, taking risks, but fail miserably at the second one. Staying rich takes almost the opposite mindset: humility, caution, and the ability to survive long enough to play the game another day. Morgan Housel says that survival is the real key to wealth. It's not about hitting home runs, it's about avoiding strikeouts. To stay wealthy, you need to respect risk, not ignore it. You need a little paranoia, not the kind that freezes you, but the kind that keeps you sharp. The people who last the longest are the ones who are always aware that things can go wrong. I like how he puts it. You have to get money before you can multiply it, but you have to keep it before you can enjoy it. Most people chase growth without thinking about protection. They double down when things are good, over-leverage, and forget that luck can turn fast. Then, when reality hits, a crash, a pandemic, a bad bet, they lose it all because they never planned to survive the downside. For me, this chapter felt like a reality check. It's easy to get caught up in the mindset of, I've got to make more, but real wealth is what you don't lose when things go wrong. Safety nets, diversification, cash reserves, those aren't boring. They're the armor that lets you keep playing. The message here is, be aggressive to get rich, be defensive to stay rich. Know when to push and when to protect. The wealthiest people aren't just good at making money, they're experts at not losing it. My takeaway: getting rich takes optimism. Staying rich takes fear. The balance between the two is where long-term success lives. If you can master that mindset, confident enough to grow, humble enough to survive, you'll stay in the game long enough to win it. Chapter 6, Tails You In. This chapter dives into one of the most fascinating truths about success. Most of it comes from just a few big wins. Morgan Housel calls them tail events. These are rare, unpredictable outcomes that make a massive impact. The kind of moments that change everything. In investing, it's those few stocks that skyrocket while the others barely move. In life, it's the handful of decisions, chances, or encounters that completely shift your direction. Housel explains that in the stock market, most companies fail or stay average, but a tiny percentage, maybe one, create the majority of the total returns. It's the same in business, art, sports, anything. The world rewards outliers, not averages. The challenge is, you never know which one will be the outlier until after it happens. This really made me think. We often overanalyze every small decision when in reality the big outcomes come from a few moments we couldn't predict anyway. The trick isn't to guess them, it's to stay in the game long enough to catch them. You can't win the lottery if you stop buying tickets. That's why patience and persistence are so powerful. You don't need to be right all the time. You just need to be right once in a while and stay consistent enough to benefit when luck finally hits. Personally, I love this idea because it takes pressure off being perfect. It's about exposure, not control. You try enough things, take enough smart risks, and sooner or later, one of them becomes that tail event that changes everything. The key takeaway: don't quit too early and don't obsess over small losses. Most of your progress will come from a handful of wins, and you need to stay in long enough to catch them. Whether it's investing, business, or personal growth, your job is to keep playing, keep learning, and let time and probability work in your favor. Success doesn't always come from knowing. It often comes from enduring. Chapter 7, Freedom. This chapter gets more personal. It's not about numbers or investments, but about what money really buys. Morgan Housel says the highest form of wealth isn't luxury or status. It's freedom. The ability to wake up and do whatever you want, with whoever you want, for as long as you want. That's real wealth. Think about it. People chase money because they believe it'll bring happiness. But what they're truly after is control over their time. If you have all the money in the world but no freedom, if your schedule, your choices, or your peace of mind depend on someone else, you're still not rich in the way that matters. This idea hit home for me. I've met people with high incomes who are miserable because they're trapped by their lifestyle, chained to their job, debts, or expectations. And I've met others with way less who seem genuinely free. The difference isn't the size of their bank account, but the ownership of their time. Housel breaks it down simply. Once you cover your basic needs and comfort, extra money adds less happiness than freedom does. A bigger house or flashier car might feel good at first, but being able to say no to things you don't want to do, that's priceless. What I love about this chapter is that it forces you to define your version of success. It's not about competing with anyone else. It's about designing a life that gives you control. For some, that might mean building a business. For others, it's living simply but on their own terms. My biggest takeaway: The ultimate goal isn't more money, it's more autonomy. If your money doesn't give you freedom, it's not serving its real purpose. And here's the mindset shift. Every dollar you save, every smart choice you make, isn't just about building wealth. It's about buying back your time. Freedom isn't a dream. It's something you can build piece by piece, decision by decision. That's the kind of wealth that actually feels good to live with. Chapter 8, Man in the Car Paradox. This chapter exposes one of the biggest illusions about money and status. The idea that flashy things make people respect or admire you. Morgan Housel calls it the man in the car paradox. When you see someone driving a beautiful car, you rarely think, wow, that person must be amazing. You think, I'd look great in that car. The admiration doesn't go to the driver, it goes to the object. That realization changes everything. Most people buy expensive things hoping others will see them as successful, confident, or powerful. But nobody's actually thinking about them. Everyone's too busy imagining themselves in that same position. It's a paradox. The very thing we chase for social approval never really gives it. This hit me hard because it's so real. We live in a culture that glorifies image. But status built on what you own is fragile. It fades the moment you stop buying. And the truth is, people respect humility and authenticity way more than displays of wealth. You don't need to prove anything with a car, clothes, or watches. Real confidence speaks louder than all of that. Housel's point isn't that buying nice things is bad. It's that you should do it for you, not for validation. There's a big difference between enjoying a luxury because you appreciate it and buying it because you want to be seen a certain way. The first brings happiness. The second brings emptiness. For me, this chapter was a reminder to never tie my identity to material things. They can amplify your comfort, but never define your worth. If you rely on possessions to feel respected, you'll always be chasing something new, and people will still care less than you think. The takeaway: the respect you want from others is rarely earned through appearances. It's earned through character, calmness, and confidence, the things you can't buy. So next time you see someone with something nice, remember, what impresses you isn't them. It's the idea of what that thing could make you feel like. That's the paradox. Chapter 9. Wealth is what you don't see. This chapter really flips how most people think about money. Morgan Housel says it straight. Wealth is invisible. You don't see it in cars, clothes, or big houses. What you see are spending choices, not wealth itself. Real wealth is the money you don't spend. The investments, savings, and options quietly building behind the scenes. That idea changes your entire mindset. Most people look rich but aren't. They spend everything they earn or more trying to look successful. But the ones who quietly invest, save, and live below their means, they're the ones building real financial freedom. Wealth isn't the Rolex or the mansion. It's the ability to wake up tomorrow and make choices on your terms. I think this chapter hits especially hard in our social media world, where showing off is normalized. Everyone's flexing what they bought, not what they built. But that's all surface level. The truth is, most people living flashy lifestyles are leveraged to the edge, drowning in car payments, mortgages, or credit cards. Housel's message is simple but powerful. What you don't see is what matters. The quiet millionaire doesn't need validation. Their satisfaction comes from knowing they're secure, not from proving it. And ironically, the more people try to look rich, the less likely they are to be rich. What stood out to me personally is how this idea ties to peace of mind. When you stop performing for others, you start winning for yourself. You stop needing applause for your lifestyle and start building freedom instead. That's the kind of wealth that lasts, silent, stable, and deeply satisfying. The key takeaway? Wealth is the unseen result of discipline and restraint. Every time you choose not to buy something you don't need, you're increasing your future freedom. So yeah, wealth isn't what you show off. It's what you protect. The flash fades, but freedom doesn't. Chapter 10. Save money. This chapter might sound basic at first, but it's one of the most powerful in the book. Morgan Housel breaks down something most people overcomplicate. Getting rich isn't always about earning more. It's about saving more. And saving isn't just a financial habit, it's a mindset. People love to believe that big incomes automatically mean big wealth. But that's not true. The ability to save is what separates financial freedom from financial stress. You can make $300K a year and still be broke if your lifestyle keeps chasing your income. On the other hand, someone making half that but saving consistently can build real independence. Housel says, you don't need a reason to save. Don't wait for a goal. Don't wait for a dream purchase. Just save because the future is unpredictable. Savings are your safety net, your flexibility, your oxygen. They buy you time and choices when life throws a curveball. What really stood out to me is how saving isn't about being cheap, it's about being prepared. The more you save, the less dependent you become on everything going perfectly. And that's the whole point. Financial freedom isn't built on luck, it's built on margin. Personally, I like this idea because it puts power back in your hands. You can't control the market, inflation, or the economy. But you can control your savings rate. That's real control. Housel also points out that people struggle to save because they care too much about what others think. They upgrade their lifestyle to impress, not because they need it. The trick is to detach from comparison. Live on less than you earn, not because you have to, but because it gives you leverage over your own life. The main takeaway: wealth isn't built by income, it's built by behavior. You don't need to be a genius investor if you're a disciplined saver. Saving is like quiet power. You may not look rich while doing it, but every dollar you keep is a piece of your future freedom, and that's the kind of wealth that actually matters. Chapter 11. Reasonable, Rational. This chapter is where Morgan Housel draws an important line between what's rational and what's reasonable, and why the second one is what truly works in real life. See, most people think the smartest investors or decision makers are those who act purely on logic, data, and math. But humans aren't robots. We have emotions, fears, and goals that don't fit perfectly into spreadsheets. So while being rational sounds ideal, being reasonable and making smart choices that fit your real life and mental comfort is what actually keeps you in the game. Housel explains that the perfect financial decision isn't the one that looks best on paper. It's the one you can stick with long-term without losing sleep. For example, the rational choice might be to invest 100% in stocks for maximum return. But if a 30% drop would make you panic and sell everything, that's not reasonable for you. You'd be better off with a mix that lets you stay calm and consistent. This hits hard because it's so true outside of money too. The best strategy isn't the one that looks perfect. It's the one you can live with when things get messy. Consistency beats perfection every time. I like how Housel normalizes being human about money. He's saying it's okay to have preferences, fears, and limits. What matters is being aware of them and making decisions that align with your real personality, not with what others say is optimal. For me, this chapter is about balance, knowing yourself well enough to make decisions that are smart and sustainable. There's no point chasing the highest returns or most aggressive plan if it burns you out or keeps you anxious. The takeaway: it's better to be consistently reasonable than occasionally rational. You don't need to play the perfect game. You just need to play one you won't quit. At the end of the day, financial success isn't about squeezing every possible dollar. It's about peace of mind. And that comes from being honest with yourself about what you can actually handle. Chapter 12. Surprise. This chapter is all about one uncomfortable truth. The biggest financial and life events are almost always the ones no one saw coming. Morgan Housel reminds us that surprises, both good and bad, are built into how the world works. Markets, economies, even personal lives are shaped by rare, unpredictable moments. And if you don't expect the unexpected, you'll always be shocked when it happens. Housel points out that people tend to plan their future based on what's happened in the past. It's natural. We look for patterns. But history is just a guide, not a script. The next big financial crash won't look like the last one. The next big breakthrough won't follow the same path either. So if you rely only on what's happened before, you'll always be caught off guard. For me, this chapter was a reminder to stay humble about what I think I know. The world changes too fast to assume you've got it all figured out. Whether it's the 2008 crash, the rise of the internet, or a global pandemic, no one really predicts those moments. But they completely rewrite the rules afterward. What Housel suggests is to expect surprise, to build flexibility into your thinking. Instead of trying to forecast exactly what will happen, focus on being prepared for whatever does. That means keeping a margin of safety, staying adaptable, and never betting everything on one assumption. I really connected with this because it applies beyond money. In life, too, the biggest shifts, the opportunities, the failures, the breakthroughs, are rarely the ones you saw coming. The people who handle surprises best are the ones who accept that uncertainty is normal. The takeaway: the world will always surprise you, so build your life in a way that can absorb shocks. Don't chase precision, chase resilience. At the end of the day, the only guarantee about the future is that it'll surprise you. And if you're ready for that, mentally, emotionally, and financially, you'll handle those surprises a lot better than most people. Chapter 13, Room for Error. This chapter ties directly into the last one. It's all about margin of safety. Morgan Housel calls it the gap between what you expect to happen and what could actually happen when life throws a curveball. That space, that cushion, is what keeps you alive when things don't go your way. He explains that most people build plans assuming everything will go right, but reality doesn't work like that. Investments drop, jobs change, health fails, and life just happens. If your plan only works when everything goes perfectly, it's not a plan, it's a wish. Having room for error means protecting yourself from the unpredictable by leaving space for things to go wrong. In finance, that means saving more than you think you need, avoiding debt that's too tight, or not investing money you can't afford to lose. In life, it means giving yourself time, energy, and options, not operating at 100% all the time. What I love about this chapter is that Housel makes caution sound smart, not weak. He says the goal isn't to predict the future perfectly, but to survive it. If you stay in the game long enough, the odds eventually work in your favor, but only if you don't get wiped out when luck turns against you. Personally, this mindset feels powerful. It's not about living scared, it's about living prepared. The best investors, entrepreneurs, and even athletes all have a backup plan. They don't bet everything on one outcome. They expect things to go wrong and structure their life so it doesn't destroy them when it does. The key takeaway: long-term success requires short-term safety. Build enough margin in your finances and decisions so you can handle surprises without breaking. Housel says it best: you don't need to be right all the time. You just need to stay alive long enough for things to eventually go right. So yeah, room for error isn't fear, it's freedom. It gives you confidence to move forward knowing that even if things go sideways, you'll still be standing. Chapter 14, You'll Change. This chapter gets personal. Morgan Housel reminds us that who you are today isn't who you'll be 10 or 20 years from now. And that matters a lot when it comes to money, goals, and life decisions. The title says it all. You'll change. Your priorities, your tastes, your definition of success, they all evolve, even if you think they won't. Housel talks about how people make long-term plans as if their future self will want the same things they do now. But that's rarely true. He calls it the end of history illusion. We believe we've already become who we're meant to be, but in reality, we're still in progress. Think about it. The dreams you had 10 years ago probably look nothing like the ones you have today. So why assume your next 10 will be any different? For me, this chapter really drives home the importance of flexibility. You can't lock yourself into a plan so tight that there's no room for your future self to pivot, because that person, the one you'll be in 10 or 20 years, might want something completely different. Maybe less money and more time. Maybe less hustle and more peace. Housel's point is that it's okay to evolve. Changing your goals isn't a failure, it's growth. The problem is when people design their entire lives around goals that no longer fit them, just because they don't want to admit they've changed. I think that's one of the wisest lessons in the book. Build a life flexible enough to grow with you. Save money not just for what you want now, but for what your future self might want. Keep options open because freedom comes from being able to adjust when your priorities shift. Personally, I find that freeing. You don't have to figure out your entire future today. Just make decisions that keep doors open, not closed. At the end of the day, money's purpose isn't to lock you into a path. It's to give you choices when your path inevitably changes. Chapter 15. Nothing's free. This chapter hits on one of the most overlooked truths about wealth and success. Everything has a price, just not always one you can see. Morgan Housel explains that in money and in life, you always pay a price, even if it's not marked with a dollar sign. For example, the cost of earning big investment returns is volatility. The cost of owning a business is sleepless nights. The cost of freedom might be risk or uncertainty. Nothing good comes without its hidden bill. The problem is that people often want rewards without paying the emotional price that comes with them. They want high returns without the market crashes, growth without discomfort, success without sacrifice. But Housel reminds us that those costs are the price of admission. You don't get to skip the line. He compares it to buying concert tickets. You don't complain about paying $100 to see your favorite band because you know that's what it costs. But in investing, when the market drops 30%, people panic and sell, as if the volatility wasn't part of the deal. The real difference between successful and unsuccessful investors? The successful ones accept the cost and stay in the game. I think this lesson goes way beyond finance. Every big dream comes with invisible fees: time, doubt, criticism, failure. If you're not willing to pay them, you don't get the reward. That's why patience, discipline, and emotional endurance matter more than intelligence when it comes to building wealth or achieving anything meaningful. Housel puts it beautifully. Everything has a price, but not all prices appear on labels. The smart move isn't trying to avoid the cost. It's recognizing it early and deciding it's worth paying. So whether it's investing in relationships or personal growth, know your price, pay it without resentment, and keep going. Because nothing truly valuable in life is ever free. Chapter 16, You and Me. This chapter dives into one of the most relatable truths about money. We're all playing different games, but most of us forget that when we look around. Morgan Housel starts by pointing out how we constantly compare ourselves to others, especially in finance. We see someone making bold moves, buying crypto, flipping houses, trading stocks, and we think, maybe I should be doing that too. But the reality is, what makes sense for them might be terrible for you because your goals, timelines, and risk tolerance are completely different. He uses a simple but powerful example. A day trader and a long-term investor might buy the same stock, but they're playing totally different games. The trader might sell in 10 minutes, the investor might hold for 10 years. So when the trader sells and the price dips, the investor panics, but shouldn't, because they're not even in the same arena. That's the heart of this chapter. Know which game you're playing. If you're investing for long-term freedom, don't take cues from people chasing short-term wins. If your goal is financial stability, don't compare yourself to someone gambling for excitement. Mixing games is how smart people make dumb mistakes. What I take from this is simple. Your financial journey is personal. You can't copy someone else's path because you don't share their reality. They might have more time, less debt, no kids, or a different comfort with risk. So your strategy should reflect your life, not someone else's highlight reel. Housel reminds us that most financial media exists for entertainment, not guidance. It's designed for people playing the short game, speculators, traders, click seekers. If you're in it for the long haul, you've got to filter the noise and protect your mindset. The key takeaway: Stop comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. Money isn't one size fits all. What works for them might ruin you. Play your own game with your own rules, your own patience, and your own goals. Chapter 17, The Seduction of Pessimism. This one's powerful. It explains why bad news sounds smarter than good news, and how that mindset can quietly kill your ability to build wealth. Morgan Housel says, humans are wired to pay more attention to danger than opportunity. It's a survival instinct. Back in the day, if you ignored a threat, you could die. So even today, when the news says market crash coming or recession ahead, we react instantly. Fear feels intelligent. Optimism feels naive. But here's the truth. In the long run, optimism is actually more accurate. The world improves over time. Economies grow, technology advances, and people keep finding ways to solve problems. Yet pessimism gets all the attention because it sounds serious and cautious. It makes people look smart, even if they're wrong most of the time. Housel gives examples of how this plays out in investing. Every decade, there's some big headline predicting collapse. And yet, markets recover, businesses adapt, and life moves forward. If you let pessimism control you, you'll end up sitting on the sidelines forever, waiting for a safe moment that never comes. I've seen this mindset in people around me too, always doubting, always expecting the next crash, and missing the quiet compounding that happens in the background. The irony is, the biggest risk isn't being optimistic. It's being too afraid to stay in the game. One of my favorite lines from this chapter is basically that pessimism grabs your attention, but optimism pays you money. It's not about blind hope. It's about understanding that progress happens slowly and setbacks are temporary. Personally, I think this idea applies to life in general. The people who move forward are the ones who believe things can get better and act on that belief even when others doubt it. So stay grounded, but keep faith in growth. The world belongs to the ones who can stay positive in a negative crowd. Chapter 18, Reasonable Expectations. This chapter is all about setting expectations that actually match reality, not what we wish would happen. Morgan Housel emphasizes that most people fail financially not because they make huge mistakes, but because they expect too much, too fast. He explains that markets and wealth grow slowly, quietly, and unpredictably. People look at the billionaires or the overnight successes and think they missed some secret shortcut. But the truth is, building wealth is mostly boring, steady, and compounding over decades. If your expectations are get rich fast or always win, you're setting yourself up for frustration. I connected with this because it's so easy to get impatient. We check our investments weekly, compare ourselves to social media, and wonder why we're not seeing instant results. Housel reminds us that this impatience is natural but destructive. Slow growth, little by little, is the real path to freedom. He also points out that reasonable expectations don't mean settling. It means understanding what's likely to happen and making decisions accordingly. That includes accepting that there will be setbacks, volatility, and mistakes along the way, but also knowing that these are normal, not catastrophic. Personally, I think this chapter teaches discipline more than anything. If you plan for gradual progress and accept life's ups and downs, you can stay consistent. If you chase unrealistic results, you end up panicking, making bad decisions, and undoing your progress. The key takeaway: expectations shape behavior. If your expectations are realistic, your decisions will be smarter, your patience longer, and your progress steady. If they're unrealistic, even great decisions can fail simply because you weren't prepared for the ride. Housel's lesson is simple. Slow, steady, consistent, reasonable. That's how wealth builds. That's how freedom grows. And that's how peace of mind survives the chaos that life throws at you. Chapter 19, You're Not Alone. This chapter is a reality check. It reminds you that your financial fears, mistakes, and doubts are completely normal. Morgan Housel points out that almost everyone struggles with uncertainty, impatience, or overconfidence at some point. The key is realizing you're not alone, and that other people have been in the same boat and survived. Housel emphasizes that humans often underestimate how common their struggles are. We think, I'm the only one who messed up my investments, or I'm the only one behind on savings. But the truth is, every successful investor, entrepreneur, or saver has had moments of doubt and loss. Everyone makes mistakes. It's part of learning and building real wealth. What really hit me here is the comfort and perspective. Knowing that setbacks are shared makes them less intimidating. Everyone experiences volatility in life and money. It's how you handle it that determines success. Panicking rarely helps. Staying consistent and learning from errors does. Housel also points out the danger of isolation. People often think they need to figure things out alone, but advice, mentorship, and shared experiences make a huge difference. Observing how others navigated failure gives you a roadmap for surviving your own challenges. For me, the big lesson is humility and patience. Nobody has perfect timing, nobody predicts every outcome, and nobody's financial journey is flawless. Accepting that normalizes your own mistakes and helps you stay the course rather than giving up or overreacting. The takeaway: your financial struggles are not unique. They're part of the human experience. The smartest move isn't to compare yourself to perfection, but to learn from the shared patterns of success and failure. At the end of the day, knowing you're not alone isn't just comforting, it's empowering. You can navigate life's uncertainties with more confidence when you realize others have faced them too, and many came out stronger on the other side. Chapter 20, Save for the Unknown. We've reached the final chapter, and Morgan Housel closes the book with one of the most practical lessons: always prepare for the unknown. For life is unpredictable, markets crash, jobs change, and emergencies happen. The question isn't if surprises will come, it's when. Housel emphasizes that savings and financial flexibility are not just about comfort or luxury. They're about resilience. They're what allow you to survive when the unexpected hits. The beauty is, you don't need a precise plan for every scenario. You just need enough margin to handle life's curveballs without panic. This chapter really hit me because it reinforces something we've seen all along in the book. Wealth isn't flashy. It's quiet security. You don't need to spend every dollar to look rich. You need to save enough so that if a sudden expense, opportunity, or crisis appears, you can handle it. That's freedom. That's peace of mind. Housel also reminds us that preparing for the unknown isn't about pessimism. It's smart realism. Life will surprise you, often in ways you can't predict. You can't control everything, but you can control how much flexibility you have. It's the difference between thriving and scrambling when events turn upside down. Personally, this chapter made me reflect on mindset. It's easy to think saving is boring or that building a cushion is slow. But the truth is, that cushion is what gives you options. It allows you to take risks, make decisions from a place of calm, and live your life without fear of collapse. The takeaway: financial security is about being ready for life's surprises, not trying to predict them. Every dollar you save for the unknown is a tool for freedom. It's the ultimate insurance policy, invisible, powerful, and priceless. Ending the book, I feel like this principle ties everything together. Wealth isn't about showing off, hitting big wins, or keeping up with others. It's about building a life where you can survive and thrive no matter what comes your way. The psychology of money isn't about complex strategies or secret hacks. It's about mindset. Morgan Housel teaches that wealth isn't just numbers. It's patience, self-awareness, and understanding your own behavior. It's about saving more than you spend, valuing freedom over flashy status, embracing the power of compounding, and preparing for life's surprises. The real takeaway? Money works best when it serves you, not when you serve it. Build habits, respect time, and focus on what you can control. That's where true financial peace and freedom come from. Thank you for listening.